G'day, and thanks very much. Firstly, I'd like to say it's interesting how we hear different things when we hear a word. I was asked to come here and speak about resilience, and I thought, it just instinctively, that meant you wanted me to tell you how brilliant I was. Because, no, that wasn't a laugh line. Please, don't laugh. I am brilliant, and I have this incredible self-confidence, which has actually increased considerably since my car crash and the brain damage. But the point is, I'd heard Belinda, when Belinda talked about resilience, what I'd actually heard was my story about how incredible I am. And I realised later that that's not really what my story is. My story, sure, there's that internal pod of resilience, but what is far more important, what's enabled me to grow, is not just taking from within, but from outside, from the family, the community around me. So that's what I'd like to share with you today. Now, I love standing up here behind the microphone because this is what I've always wanted to do, be up on a dais talking down to people, but again, that's not a joke, but I think it works much better if I can come down like this. Is this okay for you guys? Can you all see and hear me? So anyway, the point is, I guess, life will always, conspire against you. But and you need that your own personal belief and self-confidence in order to get through. And so that was carrying me through. I was, and I'm not allowed to use this word. In fact, the last time I used this word out loud in front of an audience was on the ABC News 24, the ABC Breakfast, where Michael Rowland had asked me what Kevin Rudd had once said about the Chinese. Well, he said the Chinese had rat-fucked them. And after that, amazingly, I haven't been invited back on ABC Morning TV. Michael phoned me up later that morning and said, as long as no one will tell anyone, he said, "Thanks for rat-fucking my program, Nick." And apparently, although you're allowed to swear on the ABC, you're not meant to swear before 9 a.m. so no one had told me beforehand. So anyway, the point is, and I'm sorry, Belinda, you'll kill me. I've completely moved off the trajectory. But the point is that I thought, but by the time I was a young man, I was I'd been appointed the ABC's then youngest foreign correspondent. I was over in Indochina correspondent, over in Bangkok. I mean, the thing that I loved most of all, and I shouldn't admit this, but I had 2 servants, 1 secretary, a gardener come guard, a driver, a car. I was 29. I was so up myself. It was beyond belief. I really, and as well as that, the other thing was, I had this terrific job where I was interviewing not merely state premiers or the ACT leaders. I was actually interviewing gods, because I would regularly banter with Norodom Sihanouk. And he was, to the Khmer people, King Norodom Sihanouk was effectively a god. The Thai king, who died recently, was treated as a god. When he appeared on TV, I walked into the room one day, and both the maids were kneeling down in front of the television where the king was on, and they were whying, which meant they were looking like, not looking at him, but showing respect. And you can tell the degree of respect according to where the hands are in front of the head. So an inferior person would why to a king like this, and a lord would why back like that to a junior. This was one of the things that Norodom Sihanouk had, because the charisma was incredible. And when he saw me, for example, he would always go, "Oh, Nick," and why to me as if I was his superior. And of course, that went to my head. I was the biggest, insert appropriate adjective here, this side of Luxor, the pyramids, and I was also the biggest on the other side. Anyway, the point is, then suddenly life changed. I had a terrible car crash. Amazingly, the way I drive, it wasn't my fault. Yeah, your excused laughter there. I could barely believe that it wasn't. I'd returned from, I'd been in Hanoi that morning. I'd then headed out to diplomats to get a briefing on what was going to happen with regard to a potential coup in Thailand, which did occur about a year later. And then I was going to meet a mate of mine, and I'd only had 1 half can of light beer, driving across the bridge, and another car, utterly drunk driver, smashed into the rear. Now, I was wearing one of those old non-torsion bearing seatbelts. I was hit from behind at 60 kilometres an hour. My head slammed forward at 60 kilometres an hour and banged back into the seat at 60 kilometres an hour. Now, the great thing about the seatbelt was it meant that, with the exception of my hip, which was fractured in 36 places, the body was relatively intact. What they don't tell you, though, and this is the thing, with regard to car crashes, we look at mortality rates and think, oh, that's terrible, or isn't it great there aren't so many deaths on the road? But the real casualties are the people who come out of the cars afterwards, because my brain had slammed into the front of the skull, and the skull's designed to prevent people, hitting you and slamming knives or swords into your brain. It's not designed to stop the brain slamming after being hit from a car at 60 kilometres an hour, and then a compound fracture when the mushy goo that is the brain slammed back, and slowly a blood clot developed on the top of my brainstem, which eventually it meant that by the time I'd been taken through, thank goodness for a tuk-tuk driver who just pulled up and took me to the nearest hospital, I was actually being examined when I stopped breathing, otherwise I would be dead. And they knew I was breathing when I'd come to the hospital, so they actually resuscitated me, or didn't resuscitate, they gave me oxygen, and fortunately I began my recovery, the medical recovery. So this is the important point. We're at the 5-minute mark now, I think. Yep. This is a bit like my ego. 15 minutes talking about who I am and how fantastic I am, and 5 minutes on what really matters, what you understand is genuinely important in your life. Because after that accident, I was reduced to, as a later IQ test demonstrated conclusively, because IQ tests are written down, so therefore they're like the Word of God. It's like Moses coming with the 10 Commandments, a psychologist with a score out of 100 or 200. You are therefore at this point. And so I was, and allegedly still am, of below average intelligence, and which I think, of course, means their score, what they're doing is completely, whatever they're measuring, it might be very useful, but it's not useful for us and our lives, because what they were telling me was that I was medically badly injured, and I would probably medically not be able to recover. And that was it. Thanks very much, Nick. And that's utterly correct. What made the difference for me is Kath, my wife, the support that I received from my work colleagues, not so much from the ABC, but not from the institution, from individuals within the institution. It was people who made the difference. One bloke, my boss, who'd actually appointed me over to Southeast Asia, when he heard the news I had the injury, he cried, I later found out, and he was prepared to back me, to send me back, to throw the weight of resources that I didn't deserve behind me. It was, Kath organised a roster of people to come and see me, one after the other, each day. It was the support I got from people like Tim Fischer, the former leader of the National Party, who I'd known over in Bangkok and who I'd known since he was in Albury when I'd done a story on him. But he came and spoke to me, visited me in hospital. It's that human side that you got from the extreme right, or the National Party, and also extreme left. Andrew Ravshorgi, who was then the New South Wales Health Minister, came and visited me in hospital, which just proves we think of politics as a left-right spectrum, trying to think of it your point of view, but actually it's not. You've got intelligent people and loops, and so the extreme left and the extreme right are in a circle. They're loops, and they're people like Tim Fischer and Andrew Ravshorgi, who actually had the time to come and visit me as a person. And then you've got the people who are seeking to climb up to the top, and they're the people who, of course, we end up having as Prime Minister and other people like that. So the thing is, the point is that what held me together and what gave me my resilience was not just this inner Führung, as the Germans call it, this inner leadership, this inner determination, this this sort of Nietzschean desire to be a supermensch, because I was that. But what held me together in the end was the love and continued support of Kath, who came over, rescued me in Bangkok from the hospital where I was completely gaga, brought me back to Australia, stuck with me, and probably because she was just too embarrassed to admit she'd made a mistake in coming over. I mean, you laugh, but if you'd known the last 20 years, you wouldn't laugh. And the support from friends who proved not just to be colleagues, but actual genuine friends. People who engaged in a real way. And it's those sort of relationships that make the difference between us being on earth and, filling in our times while we desperately try and struggle to make a cent more than somebody else, and from actually having worthwhile, valuable and full lives. And that's what if anything, I think we should all be striving for. And I think the very fact that you are here today shows that you are well aware of that. You didn't need me to come and speak. So I'd like you all to give yourselves a clap. And I really mean that, for what you can find within yourself, that inspiration that lets you go forward and share life with other people. So thank you. And of course, most importantly, thank you for inviting me, because I really am marvellous too. So, thanks.